You are not alive. You do not breathe, eat, sleep, think, or even know that you exist. You are barely more than a microscopic strand of genetic instructions wrapped inside a shell of protein. Yet for thousands of years, humans have feared you. They have watched gentle dogs become violent, wild animals stumble into towns, and dying people pull away from water even while desperately thirsty. Long before anyone understood what a virus was, humanity already knew your name, Rabies. Although you are almost powerless on your own, once you enter the right body, you become one of the deadliest biological forces on Earth. Your story begins inside the salivary glands of an infected animal. It might be a dog, bat, fox, raccoon, jackal, or almost any other mammal unfortunate enough to have carried you this far. The animal is already sick because its brain is inflamed and its behavior has changed. It may be unusually aggressive, strangely friendly, confused, or partially paralyzed, while thick saliva gathers around its mouth because swallowing has become difficult. Hidden inside that saliva are thousands of copies of you, waiting for another opportunity to spread. You cannot walk to your next victim, fly through the air, or jump from one body to another, so you need the infected animal to transport you. When it bites someone, scratches them with saliva-contaminated claws, or exposes broken skin to its saliva, the door opens. A tooth tears through flesh, infected saliva enters the wound, and you cross into a new world. You are now inside another mammal, perhaps a human, but you have not won yet. In fact, this is one of the most dangerous moments of your existence because the person may immediately wash the wound thoroughly and seek urgent medical treatment. Doctors may give them a series of rabies vaccinations and, when necessary, rabies immunoglobulin around the wound. If they act before you reach the nervous system, the invasion can be stopped without a dramatic battle or final confrontation. You simply disappear. Rabies is almost entirely preventable when proper treatment begins before symptoms appear. So your greatest advantage is not strength or speed, but silence. At first, you remain close to the bite, entering nearby muscle cells and creating copies of yourself. This is not a loud invasion because there may be no immediate fever, dramatic collapse, or obvious sign that something dangerous is moving beneath the skin. The wound may even heal completely, while days turn into weeks, and sometimes months. The person continues living normally, going to work, eating dinner, speaking with friends, and sleeping peacefully. They may almost forget that the animal ever bit or scratched them, but you have not forgotten. You are waiting for access to the vast communication network connecting every part of their body to the brain. You are waiting for a nerve. Once you reach a peripheral nerve ending, everything changes. Most viruses spread through the blood or lymphatic system, but you take a quieter and more protected route by entering a nerve cell and using its internal transport system. Slowly, you begin traveling toward the spinal cord and brain. You are not racing along an open highway, you are creeping through the body's communication cables, moving millimeter by millimeter and day by day. The distance you must travel matters. A bite on the leg may leave you with a much longer journey than a bite on the face or neck, while the severity of the wound, the amount of virus deposited, and the person's immune response may also affect how long the silent incubation period lasts. This is why rabies symptoms do not usually begin immediately. They may appear after several weeks or months, and in unusual cases, the delay can be even longer. Until you enter the central nervous system, the person may still be saved, but there is a terrible problem. They may have no idea that you are there. They may believe the animal looked healthy, decide that the bite was too small to matter, or assume that because the wound has healed, the danger has passed. Meanwhile, you continue your journey toward the spinal cord and eventually reach the brain. Only then does the person begin to feel that something is seriously wrong. The illness may start with symptoms that appear ordinary, including fever, weakness, headache, tiredness, and general discomfort. Nothing immediately reveals that a virus has been traveling secretly through their nerves. However, one unusual warning may appear when the old bite site begins to itch, burn, hurt, or tingle, even though the skin healed weeks earlier. The person may look at the faded mark and finally remember the animal, but by this point you have already entered the central nervous system. The rules have now changed. You begin multiplying inside the brain, causing inflammation and disrupting the neurons responsible for movement, emotion, memory, breathing, and behavior. Signals become distorted as the person grows anxious, restless, and unable to sleep. Their personality may start changing, and they may become confused, frightened, or unusually agitated. Sounds seem louder, lights feel harsher, and even a gentle current of air across the skin may trigger painful spasms or intense panic. Reality itself begins to fracture as the person hallucinates, seeing things that are not present or hearing voices that no one else can hear. Their own brain, the organ responsible for every thought, memory, and decision they have ever made, has become the place where you multiply. Then comes the symptom for which rabies is most famous: hydrophobia, commonly described as a fear of water. However, the name is slightly misleading because the person is not simply afraid of water. They are often desperately thirsty and want to drink, but when they attempt to swallow, the muscles in their throat and diaphragm may contract violently. The experience becomes painful and terrifying, so even seeing a glass of water or hearing liquid being poured can remind the brain of those spasms and trigger panic. A cup may be brought toward the person's mouth, but they pull away, not because they do not want the water, but because their own body will no longer allow them to drink comfortably. Some patients also develop aerophobia, in which even a small movement of air across the face can trigger painful spasms and terror. A gentle breeze that would normally go unnoticed may suddenly feel unbearable. Meanwhile, you are completing the journey that allows your species to continue. After multiplying inside the central nervous system, you begin traveling outward through other nerves and eventually reach different tissues and organs. Most importantly, you reach the salivary glands. The infected person or animal now produces saliva filled with copies of you. You entered the body through saliva, and now you are preparing to leave through saliva, bringing the cycle back to where it began. In animals, the brain damage you cause may lead to aggression, confusion, and biting. You are not consciously controlling the animal like a puppet because you have no mind or strategy, but evolution has preserved a horrifyingly effective cycle. A virus spread primarily through bites causes neurological changes that may increase the chance of another bite. Sometimes the illness appears in its furious form, in which the victim becomes hyperactive, agitated, and unpredictable. Periods of excitement and confusion may alternate with brief moments when they appear calm and aware of what is happening. Their body sweats, their heart races, saliva gathers in the mouth, and muscles begin to spasm. The brain gradually loses control of systems it once managed without effort. However, not every infection looks like this, because some victims develop paralytic rabies. Instead of extreme agitation, weakness begins near the exposure site and spreads through the body. The muscles slowly stop responding, and because the symptoms can resemble other neurological illnesses, doctors may not immediately recognize what is happening. Eventually, the paralysis reaches the muscles needed for breathing. In furious rabies, the person may experience delirium, hallucinations, and seizures before entering a coma. In paralytic rabies, the body may simply become weaker and increasingly still. The paths are different, but the destination is usually the same. Once clear clinical symptoms appear, rabies is almost always fatal. The patient may enter a coma as the brain loses control of breathing, heartbeat, and other essential functions. This is what makes you so terrifying. You are not the fastest virus, nor are you the easiest to transmit, because you do not normally spread through casual contact, shared rooms, or ordinary conversations. You usually require infected saliva or nervous tissue to reach broken skin or a mucous membrane, most commonly through the bite of an infected animal. That limitation should make you weak, but you possess something more frightening than speed: patience. You can remain hidden while the opportunity for prevention gradually closes. The person may feel completely healthy while you travel toward the brain, and once symptoms finally reveal what you are, it is usually too late to stop you. However, there is one important part of your story that should never be forgotten. You are deadly, but you are not unstoppable. You depend on delay. You depend on someone dismissing a scratch because it barely broke the skin, assuming a bat encounter was harmless, or waiting to see whether symptoms develop. You depend on people believing that a small wound cannot contain a serious threat, because the moment they wash the wound thoroughly and seek urgent medical attention, your advantage begins to disappear. A rabies vaccine does not need to rescue the brain after you have taken control of it. Instead, it prepares the immune system to destroy you before you arrive there. Rabies immunoglobulin, when required, provides immediate antibodies around the exposure site, while the vaccine teaches the body to produce its own protection. The exposed person does not need to wait for the animal to become aggressive, nor do they need to wait for fever, confusion, difficulty swallowing, or hydrophobia. In fact, waiting for symptoms is the worst possible decision because those symptoms are not the beginning of your invasion. They are evidence that you have almost reached the end. You are rabies, a microscopic passenger carried in saliva, a silent traveler moving through nerves, and a disease capable of turning thirst into terror, while forcing the brain to fight against its own body. Once symptoms begin, you almost never lose, but before they begin, humans still have time. That is the weakness hidden inside one of the deadliest viruses on Earth. You are not defeated by greater strength. You are defeated by speed, not yours, but theirs. Safety note: anyone bitten, scratched, or exposed to the saliva of a potentially rabid mammal should wash the area thoroughly and seek urgent medical care immediately. Do not wait for symptoms.